EigenLayer just crossed over $1 billion US in total value deposited into their protocol. With this massive milestone, I decided to do a deep dive into EigenLayer, learn everything that it's all about, and summarize it for you in this video. I spent quite a lot of time researching, watching interviews, reading the white paper just to make this video for you. So if you enjoy it, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to see more content like this in the near future. But with that said, let's dive right into the details. So EigenLayer is claiming to be the shared security to hyperscale Ethereum. And if you want, I'll leave these slides in the description. They're not that high quality. I just kind of cooked them up so that I would have something in the background to actually present that's a little more professional. But if you do want them, they'll be in the description. So this slogan's sounds great, but how do they actually do it? Before we dive into that, I thought it would be important to actually kind of summarize the current state of Ethereum in its proof of stake consensus mechanism, as proof of stake liquid staking is actually very important to even begin to understand why EigenLayer was created. So I'm going to do a quick recap of proof of stake. So for those of you who don't know, Ethereum went through this event called the Merge in September of 2022. I believe it was September 15th. And essentially it changed its consensus mechanism from proof of work to proof of stake. And the reasons that it did that, I believe, were to reduce the amount of environmental impact that Ethereum was having. One of the main critiques, I should say, of Ethereum was that it was bad for the environment. Like, you know, we see all these graphs of Bitcoin using more power than some countries. Ethereum was on the same kind of par to do that with the proof of work consensus mechanism. So it decided to opt into proof of stake, which was something that Polygon proof of stake chain was using for a couple of years in production. So it was kind of battle tested already. And the community was kind of happy to, in this merge event, all in one go, just swap over essentially from proof of work to proof of stake. And the proof of stake, the main other benefit, at least in my mind, is that it was massively impactful in the amount of new ETH being issued. And maybe I'll abandon these slides for a second here just to show you a website called ultrasound.money. And what this is essentially a website summarizing the impact of the merge on Ethereum. At least that's the way that I interpret it. So you can see in this ETH supply chart here, you can see the total supply of ETH increased substantially over time because new ETH was being issued at a higher rate than ETH was being burned. And burned, if you don't know what that means, is just being deleted essentially from the supply. So more supply was coming in than supply was going out. And for this reason, the total ETH supply was going up and up and up over time until you see this merge event, ETH starts to actually level out, and now it's actually decreasing over time. And you can see that here, right? So if we see how many ETH was issued, let's do a 30-day time frame. You can see 102,000 ETH was burned over the past 30 days, and 70,000 new ETH was issued. So that's a total supply change of negative 31,000. And this is as a result of EIP 1559. I will leave a link to that in the description as well if you want to read more about that. But essentially, since there was no more miners to pay out these rewards from proof of work, around 90% of the new ETH being issued over time was essentially cut out in an instant, right? Because there's no miners to reward. Since we moved from proof of work to proof of stake, the only thing that needs to have new ETH issued is to actually reward the stakers and the validators in the Ethereum network. So the incentives to actually swap from, give me a second to fix my presentation view here. The incentives to swap from proof of stake or proof of work to proof of stake was A, like an environmental impact, and B, I think it is better for the ETH or Ether in the long term. I'm sure there are several other reasons of why this decision was made that I won't get into in this video. But proof of stake, the way that it works, if you're not already familiar, is actually pretty simple to explain, right? So people put in something at stake, and the thing that they have at stake is their money in the form of ETH. So the participants in the Ethereum network, they have ETH or Ether, and people generally want to earn more money. And they also don't want to lose money. And the way that this works is you put your money at stake, and essentially you do that by running a validator node to help secure and decentralize the Ethereum network. So as a validator node, you're responsible for kind of running Ethereum software to actually make the chain run, essentially, right? You're participating in the network to help essentially new blocks be created and agreed upon to come to consensus on the blockchain state. And the way that that works in reality is essentially you download software and you run it on a machine, you run it on your own machine, you can run it on AWS or something like that. It doesn't really matter where. But as you run this validator, you are rewarded for doing a good job of running that validator, such as, doing the right thing, running the software correctly, processing transactions correctly, or proposing new blocks if you're called upon correctly. If you do a good job of running your validator, you are rewarded with more ETH. So you make money, which is what people want to do. If you run your validator badly, right? If you're trying to attack the network, if you're proposing blocks that are not correct, that other people, I should say, do not agree on, for example, you will have your ETH slashed as you're essentially viewed as attacking the network. This would also happen if you don't do your job when you're called upon. For example, the protocol asks you to do something and your validator was down, or you're intentionally not answering the protocol is viewed as kind of an attack, right? So when you don't do a good job, you have your ETH slashed, meaning you lose your money. So basically, if you do a good job, you earn more money. If you do a bad job, you lose your money. And this is essentially, in a nutshell, the proof of stake consensus mechanism. It relies on the fact that people want to make money and they're willing to run the software to help secure and decentralize Ethereum in order to do so. And people also don't want to lose money. So they're kind of incentivized to not do the wrong thing at the same time. So the implications of this are, as we kind of saw already, both good, and we haven't really explored the bad sides yet. So the good was that Ethereum became deflationary, as we saw in that chart previously. As a result of less new ETH being issued, the total supply of Ether is actually decreasing over time as a result of the merge. The other benefits we saw are like environmental and some other things that I'm sure I'm not aware of, at least off the top of my head. But the bad side to this is that you almost need to be like a rich person. I know that's like not the best way of phrasing things, but you need to have a lot of money in order to participate as a validator node in Ethereum. And that amount is 32 ETH. And for those of you who are too lazy like myself to do the conversion, that is, I believe, around 80,000 USD at least at the time I'm making this video, where ETH is around 2,700 US dollars. It's a lot of money for anyone, right? That's a lot of money for me. It's probably a lot of money for you. It's a lot of money for almost everyone in the world to actually own and stake 32 ETH in order to run their own validator. So this has led to protocols such as Lido Finance. If you want to check it out, it's lido.fi. It is a way that allows people to stake their ETH, but doesn't have that hard cap of 32 ETH. So I could come in with like 0.1 ETH, which let's just say is $300 or something like that. I can come into the Lido protocol, stake the little amount of ETH that I have. And essentially the way it works under the hood is they have around 30 plus companies essentially, or groups or parties that run validators as part of the Lido network. And they take all of the staked ETH that individuals have kind of pulled together into this Lido smart contract. And they essentially group it up together and say, hey, I'll take the money. I'll do the hard work and take on the risk of running the validator with the money that you've provided. And they redistribute back the rewards from the validator back to the individuals. And they take a small fee off the top for kind of facilitating that. So essentially, the individuals pull together their funds on this protocol, and the validators kind of take the pooled money, put in the work, run the validator nodes, and redistribute back the rewards and take a little off the top. Now, the way that this works, I took from the Lido website, and Lido is just one of many examples that offer this service. Is essentially you put in your ETH. Let's say, again, we'll use the example of 0.1 ETH. I put it into the protocol, which is really just a smart contract under the hood, or several smart contracts, probably likely in reality. And it takes my Ether as a kind of a deposit. And in return, it gives me like almost a one-to-one mapping of a liquid staking token, or an LST. And that's going to be important to remember as we talk about EigenLayer in a moment here. So I put in my ETH, I receive a liquid staking token. In the case of Lido, you get back Lido staked ETH, which has the ticker of STETH or staked ETH. And then you can reuse that liquid staking token in essentially any other protocols, such as in step 3 here, it says you can use your ST tokens, or ETH, it should say. Oh, you actually can't see it because my head's blocking it. Let me move that across here. You can use your ST tokens across DeFi to compound your daily stake reward. So that essentially means, hey, we've given you a token that you can go and do whatever you want with, but in order to actually regain the ETH that you originally put in, I believe you need to do again a one-to-one swap of how much STETH you have back to ETH. So if you lose your STETH, I don't think you're getting back the original ETH. So essentially, put in your ETH, you get back the equivalent in a liquid staking token, which is usually like STETH or XYETH. It's just like a fake ETH pretty much that you can use across different protocols. And this is kind of what we're going to introduce later, which is called restaking, where you have originally staked your ETH in step 1 here. You then get back this liquid staking token, and then you can do whatever you want, such as staking again with that liquid staking token. So this is quite an important concept that I wanted to quickly touch on, as well as a proof of stake consensus mechanism. Okay, so now we've talked about kind of the user's experience of Ethereum and acting as either a validator if you have 32 ETH and you're willing to put in the work to run a validator, as well as the stakers, who are kind of people like myself who don't have 32 ETH and don't really want to spend the time running their own validator, but still want to receive rewards as something that I don't even think I've mentioned yet. The reason and the incentive behind doing something like staking or running a validator node is that you get rewards in the form of more ETH on the ETH that you staked. So I believe if you're running your own validator node, it's probably around 5%. If you're doing it via a liquid staking protocol like Lido, it's around 3.5%, with the difference being that since you're not doing all the work and running the validator, there are some fees associated with the protocol taking some fees, as well as the actual validators taking some fees as well. So you don't get all of the rewards back since you're not really putting in any of the work. So that's kind of the user's experience. What I wanted to quickly touch on, again, I know we haven't even talked about EigenLayer yet, but I really wanted to lay the foundations of why this was created first, because I think it makes a lot more sense, at least in my mind, that way. So from a developer perspective on Ethereum, developers choose to use Ethereum because it has the highest level of security and decentralization in the blockchain space. And you can argue back and forth about this, but I think this is true. Ethereum is goated for security and decentralization. It has the highest number of validators, as I've got on the chart here. It arguably has the strongest sense of decentralization. So this is why developers are attracted to Ethereum, because they want to build permissionless and decentralized protocols or services that by default, if it's a smart contract deployed to Ethereum, it inherits those security and decentralization properties, because the Ethereum environment and the EVM and the vast array of participants in the Ethereum network are the ones actually executing the code on those smart contracts. This is also the same from a roll-up perspective, or more broadly, a protocol perspective. So for example, Polygon is choosing to build its protocols on the Ethereum network. So you can see in my Polygon 2.0 video, Polygon Proof of Stake is moving to a Ethereum layer 2. The Polygon ZK EVM, again, is already a Ethereum layer 2. The difference there is the POS network is a Validium. The ZK EVM is a rollup. If you're interested in that, I will leave a link in the description to that full video as well. But we're noticing, and this is actually specified in the Ethereum roadmap, is the rollup centric roadmap that Ethereum has outlined. And this means people want to inherit the security and decentralization of Ethereum, but the scalability is not there. So protocols can come in and create different scalability solutions like optimistic rollups, like Validiums, like zero knowledge rollups, to address that scalability pillar while inheriting these massive pool of validators and the security and the decentralization of Ethereum. So both developers and kind of companies, I guess you could say, or protocols more accurately, are choosing to build on Ethereum because of this property that is really hard to create. It's very difficult to bootstrap a network with the same size, with the same trust, and the same level of decentralization that Ethereum has. And this is really unparalleled in terms of any other alternative L1. So that's why we like Ethereum. It's great at security and decentralization. And whenever I say this, I get comments of like, well, security is really bad on Ethereum because there's always hacks. That's not really what I mean when I say security. I'm talking about the network layer, right? In terms of how attackable Ethereum is if it were to be, attacked in terms of like people trying to collude to put the network on halt or attack the network or create an incorrect state of the chain. That's not necessarily related to the smart contract code. So I wanted to clarify that as well. So as we just mentioned, devs like Ethereum because it's decentralized and because it's secure. But that is true for smart contracts that you deploy to Ethereum. And as we know, Ethereum has kind of grown very quickly to become broader and bigger than just the scope of smart contracts. So yes, there are smart contracts and those do inherit the properties of Ethereum, but Ethereum also has kind of related and expanded into different ecosystems as well. So for example, in order to use an L2 built on Ethereum, you would need to access a bridge, right? If you take a look under the hood, for example, in my Polygon ZK EVM video, the way that these rollups are sending transactions back to Ethereum is via these sequences and, for example, provers and things like this. These are not necessarily directly inheriting the security of Ethereum, right? Because I'm not specifically saying Polygon here, but these infrastructure like bridges and like sequences require their own economic security in order to be decentralized. And there's a debate in itself whether sequences should be decentralized, but that's probably a topic for another video. Nonetheless, these pieces of infrastructure that are, I guess you could say, built on Ethereum, but are really the same as smart contracts, right? They kind of live in this middle ground between Ethereum and a different protocol. So I put another note here that I thought was interesting that's not directly from EigenLayer itself, but I said also that other chains probably want to access Ethereum's network of nodes in the future, because imagine I want to build my own chain. I want it to have its own proof of stake network filled with validator nodes. I would probably find it hard to incentivize people, and we'll talk about this a little more, but probably find it hard to incentivize people to stop staking ETH and swap over to my chain and become a validator. So I just put that little note there. That's not directly from EigenLayer, it's just my own thoughts. So take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, that actually kind of follows into this final dot point here, is like bootstrapping your own security is hard. And if you do bootstrap your own decentralized pool of validators, it's never going to be as good as Ethereum, right? You're probably realistically, at least in my opinion, never going to reach the same level as decentralization and security that Ethereum has today. So the next slide here is, if Ethereum's so good, what if you could access and tap into the vast number of validators and nodes running the Ethereum network? All right, what if you could do that without running into the issue where you need to somehow convince people to stop staking their ETH and buy and stake your token, which is most of the time going to be more volatile and relatively more risky than staking Ethereum directly, right? So you need to somehow convince people running Ethereum, or maybe not running Ethereum validators, to start running validators in your own network. And this is kind of touching in on what I was talking about previously, was it's difficult to convince people running Ethereum validators to say, hey, stop doing that. Instead, you should swap over to my network and run a validator on my network, because the people with, $80,000 US dollars are probably putting that into the Ethereum network, hoping to have their value of the ETH increase over time and also receive, the 5% per annum rewards for running that validator correctly. There's arguably more risk associated with swapping over to a different network, different token, and you also have that opportunity cost as you don't hold on to that ETH if you stop becoming an ETH validator. So what if, which is kind of where we're finally going to get to the EigenLayer slide, what if you could bootstrap your own pool of validators by tapping it into the existing pool of validators from Ethereum? And on top of that, what if you could do that without making those validators stop validating Ethereum and stop staking on Ethereum. So you could essentially say, hey, you can still leave your ETH staked in the Ethereum protocol, leave your validator running. But what if you could also do that and then also validate or perform some operation in a different service, help me secure a different service, and I'll add more rewards on top if you help me do that. So that's really what EigenLayer is about. And we're going to talk about how this works and why this is kind of appealing for all kinds of different parties in the next couple of sections. Okay, so WTF is EigenLayer. The secondary slogan, I think we already had one, is to be a platform for connecting stakers and infrastructure developers. This is kind of what we were talking about before. And I'll touch on this in the objectives on the right-hand side that I put over here. So essentially there's three parties here. There's stakers, validators, or they're known in EigenLayer as operators, as technically there's more roles that they could play rather than just being the traditional validator. And then there's also developers. So stakers, as we'll talk about in this next slide, and maybe I'll go over here now, they are the people like myself. I don't have 32 ETH. I don't want to run my own validator, but I want to get more rewards than 3.5% on the ETH that I'm staking. So in order to do that, I'm going to hopefully find a way for my liquid staking token to have some added value in a way that I can help secure different networks, but mainly I really care about getting more rewards. So I'm going to put up the staked tokens that I got for staking my ETH into different services to earn more rewards on top of the rewards that I'm getting for staking my ETH. The operators are the second parties. So this is the people who are running the Ethereum validator nodes. Essentially, they have two goals. One is to be a part of securing and decentralizing different services other than Ethereum. And to be honest, at least in my selfish view of the world, I guess, is there's probably a small percentage of people that are, doing this out of the good of their heart and the honor of securing networks. I'm sure there's people out there that do that, but they're also probably in it for the additional rewards, right? The reason that they are incentivized to run the validator node on Ethereum is to get rewards. They are going to then participate in securing other services to get additional rewards. So they're taking on more work to get more rewards. And then the developers on the right-hand side, these are the developers of the services, right? Their goal here is they actually want to have the services or the products that they're building actually have the secure and decentralized properties that Ethereum has, right? They want to essentially tap into the validators that are securing the Ethereum network and have them additionally secure and decentralize their service, whatever that may be. And what we're going to look at next is Eigen, I think it's pronounced EigenDA, which is a service built on EigenLayer, which will kind of review each of these three parties, how they're involved, and hopefully that'll kind of clarify the real value proposition for EigenLayer and why it's actually an attractive opportunity for each of these different personalities that we have in this screenshot or this slide here. Okay, so we talked about from a developer perspective, you would use EigenLayer to actually essentially register your service that you want to have be secured by the validators that are validating Ethereum, right? So here's an example that Eigen Labs, the team I believe that is behind EigenLayer, obviously, has built, which is EigenDA, and DA is standing for data availability, and then there's kind of like an invisible L here where it's a data availability layer. Essentially, EigenDA is the first AVS, which is this actively validated service that has been registered in EigenLayer. So here, the persona that we just talked about, the developers, in this case, Eigen Labs, the goal is they're building a service, in this case, a data availability layer. And if you don't know what that means, it's probably a topic for a different time, but the TLDR is essentially rollups or layer twos. Some of them opt in to store data of their transactions on Ethereum. It's expensive to do that. The alternative is you can not post transaction data back, or you can alternatively use a data availability layer and send the data of the transactions that occurred on your L2 to that data layer rather than send them to Ethereum. And by doing so, you're saving a lot of costs because it is expensive to store that data on Ethereum. So that's what a data availability layer is. And EigenLabs has created EigenDA, data availability, as this kind of proof of concept. I guess it is a real product, but I kind of treat it as a proof of concept to test out this hypothesis that is EigenLayer. So what we're going to do next is we're going to go through each of those three personas, the developers. I think it makes sense to start with that. And then we'll talk about the operators and the stakers and how all of them fit into this kind of theory that we've been talking about here in this real example. So first, we're going to talk about these developers. And the goal of EigenLabs here is they want to build a service that is trusted, decentralized, and secure, right? So as we've talked about, when you're creating a service, like a bridge, like a data availability layer in this case, you want to kind of bootstrap your decentralization and security. And it's difficult to do that. And it's difficult to incentivize people to actually come over to your service and help perform whatever task you need, such as acting as a validator. So that is a problem, right? The problem for EigenLabs here is they need to find, convince, and maintain a pool of validators to help secure this thing I'm building, in this case, EigenDA, right? Since it's not a smart contract, I'm building a data availability layer that is separate but related to Ethereum. It doesn't inherently secure the properties of Ethereum, and therefore I need to sort of bootstrap and create my own security. So the usual method that I would do that is I would create a token and I would say, hey, I'm going to offer higher rewards than you would get if you were securing Ethereum for you to come over and secure my network instead. So basically, let's say EigenLabs creates Eigen token and they say, I'm going to offer you 50% per annum on the Eigen token or whatever that you stake to secure my network. That's the kind of incentive model that would be required to help move people over from being an Ethereum validator to an EigenLabs, EigenDA validator, for example, right? You needed to create some incentive that is attractive enough for these validators to come over, stop validating on Ethereum, and validate your network instead. So the hesitance, if that's a word, from the validators to actually do that is, well, you're creating a new token. As an ETH validator, I obviously believe in the price of ETH and I want to keep my ETH. So you're going to need to kind of incentivize me to, well, sacrifice my ETH that I'm buying and buy your token instead. And typically tokens, ETH is volatile, but alternative tokens are even more volatile, arguably, that it is another risk that I'm taking on to actually buy your token, hold on to this token because the price realistically is probably going to go up and down unpredictably. So people are hesitant to buy it because they don't have as much faith as they would in Ethereum or ETH. But with the proof of stake network, as we've kind of discussed in the context in the previous slides, you do need to have a fair amount of the token in that network in order to actually start securing it. So here's the problems, right? There is a difficulty in attracting people to actually make the thing that you're building decentralized and secure. And people generally don't want to do it unless you're offering these kind of crazy rewards. So here's where EigenLayer comes in. It's basically asking the question, what if people, developers, building these services like EigenDA could access Ethereum's validators? And even better, what if they could access those validators without asking them and having the expectation that they're going to stop validating Ethereum and stop holding their Ethereum and stop staking their Ethereum in order to come across to your service and act in whatever operational task you expect them to do. So what if we could get the best of both worlds almost is kind of what EigenLayer is saying here. All right, so here is like a specifics in EigenDA. So the goal as a developer is to build, as we kind of already mentioned, the data availability layer that has a secure and decentralized foundation. The problem here, as we mentioned, is, well, I need some people to actually come and help me secure this thing. Luckily, with EigenLayer, I can register my application or my service, the AVS, actively validated service, through the EigenLayer protocol. I can basically say, hey, here's my service. It's called EigenDA. Here are the rules of when you'll be rewarded, how much you'll be slashed, what software I want you to run, what tasks I expect you to run to help me secure this network, and then register that through the protocol. And the operators will see that and choose to opt in additionally to staking their ETH. So they can both stake their ETH and secure the Ethereum network, as well as with restaking, they can opt in and secure your network as well and perform the tasks that you need to make sure your service is actually secure. And the method that this works is essentially what we've just talked about. So you can opt in as an operator to validate both Ethereum and this service and other services on EigenLayer as well. So that brings us to the operators. So the developers register their service in the EigenLayer protocol, and the operators can see that through either the smart contracts or the applications. The EigenLayer actually has an application, which is kind of a dashboard where you'll be able to see what services you can opt into as an operator. So the operator, basically, we kind of mentioned this already. The goals are, well, some of them will want to help participate and secure other networks to kind of benefit the ecosystem. Most of them, though, probably care about earning more rewards. So they're getting around 5% per annum on the operations as acting as a validator in the Ethereum network. For some people, that's not enough. 5% is not enough, and they want to get more rewards. So they're willing to put in more work and perform tasks for other networks with a similar process, right? They're going to run software like they would run the Ethereum node software, and they're going to perform some tasks, and they're going to be either rewarded for it or they're going to be slashed for not doing a good job of those tasks. So here we said the main goal is, hey, I want to secure the networks. Sub goal is I'm going to get more rewards in the form of tokens for playing my part in securing those services. The problem for them, which is not really a problem, it's like a desire, is to get more rewards, right? Ethereum only offers 5%. I want to get more rewards than 5%, and I'm willing to take on the additional work required to do so in securing additional services. The usual method that I would do this is, well, I'm gonna not stake my ETH anymore. I'm not going to secure the Ethereum network anymore. I'm going to stop running my validator, and I'm going to go secure some other service instead with my funds. So this is pretty much what you would have to do if you didn't have restaking, where, well, you staked your ETH, that's it. You're securing Ethereum, your ETH is locked up in that validator. So what happens in the case of EigenDA here is the validators basically say, hey, I'm willing to help couple of other services secure their networks by running additional software. On the right-hand side, a screenshot here is like instructions that I took from EigenDA documentation on how you can actually download the software. You basically do a git clone, set up a couple of variables, run the software on whatever machine you're running it on, and then opt into EigenDA. So that's just a quick screenshot of the requirements and a brief segment of the setup required. So you basically clone down some code, run some scripts, change some variables, and then you're good to go. You're essentially running the operations that the service or the developer expects you to. So the goal is basically, as we mentioned, I want to secure my networks and I want to get more rewards. And then the solution provided with EigenLayer that was previously not possible is, since I can opt in to do both securing Ethereum and secure other services, I can easily just take on additional work and receive additional rewards for doing that additional work. So that brings us to the third party here, which is the stakers. And as we recall, the stakers basically wanted to earn more rewards, but they don't have 32 ETH to run their own validator, and they might not want to run their own validator, right? There's risks associated with it. There's a bit of work to actually set these things up. So maybe they do have 32 ETH, maybe they don't. Doesn't really matter. If you're not running a validator, you can stake your ETH, and previously that would work through protocols like Lido, as we've mentioned in this video. There's a bunch of different protocols where you can stake your ETH and earn rewards with these kind of systems where validators are pulling up your funds and doing the work for you, and you get most of the rewards back. So with EigenDA, the stakers basically say, I'm willing to take on a bit more risk, right? I'm willing to provide my funds to the operators in order to trust them to do the work and distribute the funds back to me. And we'll talk a little bit more about the trust relationships between these parties in a later slide. But essentially, they say, I want more rewards. I'm willing to provide my ETH to actually send that to the operators to do the work and get most of those rewards back for their work. Previously, it's not that much different, right? I would have used a service like Lido and get a liquid staking token in return, and then I can do whatever I want with that. You can, in theory, try and go and make some money off that liquid staking token as well. But the new method is you can do the same thing, really. It's just a different way of doing it. So as a staker, I can then opt in to provide or stake for additional services through the EigenLayer protocol. So imagine there's like 50 different services registered in the EigenLayer from various different developers, and there's, let's say, 10 operators per service, right? So there's 500 operators, 50 services, and then let's say there's like 20,000 stakers, right? The system works by saying, okay, the staker wanted to stake in protocol A, or let's say EigenDA in this case. So let's say I want to put my ETH, my staked ETH, which would be like Lido staked ETH in this case. I want to put it into EigenDA and get the rewards offered for EigenDA staking. The way that I would do that is it actually goes to the operator who does the work for me. Okay, so and we'll have a diagram of this in the next slide, which maybe will make it a bit more clear. But I actually stake with the operator, and then the system works out, well, this operator is performing these operations for this service. Then it kind of maps it up, right? So it says, okay, this person wants to stake in this service. Here's an operator in the middle that's actually doing the work. Send it through that kind of middle path from staker to operator in order to facilitate the staking in that service. So the operators are kind of acting as a middleman between the service and the staker here. All right, so here's the chart that hopefully makes a bit more sense. And I realize I'm blocking some of the text here, so let me move over. So it really starts as the developers. I think that makes sense most in my mind is the developers, they're the ones with the demand. They want the security and the decentralization out of the operators, right? So they register the service. Let's say I'm registering Jared data availability layer. I want some validators to help me secure it, or I want some other role, right? Let's say, I don't know this for sure, but let's say they need someone to do some like proving or ZK proofs, for example. They need you to run some specific software, and they're willing to reward you for doing so. Okay, so the developers basically register their application and hope that operators are incentivized enough to actually perform the tasks to get those rewards. All right, so the operators take a look and say, yeah, I'm down to actually perform those tasks for Jared DA. I'm willing to opt in and help you perform that job. Let's say it is acting as a validator to help you secure that service. Realistically, the reasoning here is, okay, those rewards are juicy. I want to get those rewards, so I'm willing to do the tasks that you want me to. So the operators might have some requirements in how much ETH or some other requirements in order to actually do that job. As we saw in the case of EigenDA here, I believe, if we go back a couple of slides, you needed 32 ETH delegated and some other requirements here in order to opt in as an operator. So they'll opt in as they please to the various different services as they choose to, and the stakers will do the same thing. So the stakers, while there is a line directly to operators here, they're actually making their own decision, right? They're saying, I want to opt in to Jared DA, but I don't want to opt in to EigenDA for some reason, right? Maybe the rewards aren't good enough, or maybe there's some risks that I don't like the looks of that I'm not willing to put my money into. So as a staker, I'm making my own decision, but I'm not really providing any value necessarily to the developers because I'm not doing any work myself, right? I'm just providing the tokens to the operators to actually do the work. So the way that it works is I actually kind of direct the staking through the operators and I earn rewards that way. So this is a similar structure to what you would experience in something like Lido, where you don't have the desire or the requirements to actually run those tasks yourself. So you just pull it up with other stakers that goes through these operators who are the ones actually doing the work. They receive the rewards and distribute it back to the individual stakers. Okay, so now we're going to get onto some of the risks, right? And there are 3 key risks that I wanted to cover here. And these are pretty much taken straight from the documentation or various articles that I've read over the course of the past couple of days. First one I wanted to talk about is this relationship between the staker and the operator. And we've already briefly touched on this just now, but I wanted to read out this quote that I read from the article. Basically, it says the staker is trusting the operator that they are delegating to. If the operator misbehaves, the staker could miss out on a potential fee, payments, or even lose their entire stake. All right, so I added some like alarm bells here. I'll move myself to the middle here again. But essentially, as a staker, you're basically giving your ETH away to the operator and hoping that they do a good job. That's the reality here, is as a staker, if the operator trolls you and does a terrible job, they can just lose all of your money. And I think that's a little bit overlooked here, but I'm going to also justify why I don't think this is a realistic scenario as well. So the operator, let's say they do a terrible job of providing the service to Jared DA. They did a bad job and the developer's like, hey, what the fuck are you doing? I'm going to slash all your ETH because either you're doing a terrible job or you're trying to attack the service that I'm trying to decentralize, right? So this could actually be serious. The operator might genuinely be trying to attack and break down the decentralization and the security of the service that the developer is providing. And in that case, the developer has every right to say, well, I'm going to slash your ETH away because you're doing something that I don't like and you're trying to attack my network, which is kind of the whole premise of the proof of stake protocol, is to say, well, you're incentivized for doing the right thing and you're punished for doing the wrong thing. And if you keep doing the wrong thing, you get more and more punished and it scales up quite quickly. All right. So the only problem with that is it's not only the operator's funds that they're using. Yes, the operator likely has some of the funds staked to secure the network or the service that they're securing, but they also have all of the funds that are being routed to them from the stakers, right? So let's say staker A, B, C provides funds to operator D. The operator D is now in control of A, B, and C's funds and is receiving the rewards based on those funds. If they're doing a good job, let's say they've pulled up 100 ETH and they get like a 10% bonus, they're therefore getting 110 ETH per, a 10 ETH per annum. Now they have 110 ETH over the year. And then they probably take a cut off the top and distribute the benefits back to, or the rewards back to the stakers, right? But the same thing happens in the opposite case where they're doing a terrible job and they get slashed, right? They have some of their own funds slashed and they also have some of the funds from the stakers as well. So as a staker, you're very heavily reliant and basically just praying that the operator does a good job with the funds that you have staked because they're the ones responsible for getting the rewards and distributing them back to you, but they're also responsible for taking on the slashing, which you don't really have any control over. So there's this very strong trusted relationship between these two. I think we've already talked about restaking, so I'm just going to skip over this one. The second risk that I wanted to discuss was the trusted relationship between the operator and the developer as well. So I'm going to read this from an article that I read over the past couple of days as well. So this says the operator is relying on the AVS developer, which if you remember is the actively validated service developer. So this is basically the relationship between operator and the developer to accurately code the client software and the on-chain slashing condition. If there are bugs in the AVS softwares, at best, the operator might miss potential fee payments. At worst, the operator could be slashed for all their stakes. So what this is saying is so as an operator, you're downloading software and running it. What if there's a bug in the software that even if you're doing a good job, the software isn't recognizing that properly and thinks you're doing a bad job, right? So this is no one's dishonest behavior. There's just a bug between the developer and the operator that is causing the software to misrepresent the operator's behavior. In that case, since there's a relationship between the developer and the developer has defined the slashing conditions. So that just means in what case are we slashing or punishing the operator? Because you want those conditions in case the operator is trying to attack your service or, just be dishonest in general in the way that they're running that operation. You want those slashing conditions to punish them for not doing the right thing. But sometimes it's going to be bugs in those conditions and you're going to punish the wrong people, punish the wrong behavior. And that in like a best case scenario is, okay, you missed out on some potential benefits. Worst case scenario is you keep slashing and slashing and slashing, even though they've done nothing wrong. And next minute you have an operator who's lost all of their staked with your service, even though they've been doing the right thing the whole time. So that is a very real responsibility. And that lies really between the developers and the operators. One thing I wanted to touch on before we go into the third one is I did mention, I don't think this is a realistic scenario, is because in the case of the operators, right? The operators are the ones who pulled up the funds from the stakers and do the tasks. The motivation is not really there to kind of blow yourselves both up, right? So the operator, in order to essentially blow up the staker's ETH, if they wanted to for some reason, they're probably blowing themselves up as well. So in the process of losing everyone else's money, they're probably also losing their own money, which obviously they don't want to do. So I think this is a uncommon, right? Unless they're really like going rogue and just saying, let's just blow everyone up in the sense that they're losing everyone's funds, then that is a real possibility, but the incentivization and the motivation is not there to do so. Similarly, in this, there is a possibility that there's bugs that would cause this, and we'll talk about the remedy for that in the next slide, but there's also not really incentivization to do this, right? The developers, the reason they're registering the service is because they want their service to become secure and decentralized. And to do that, they need these operators to actually perform those services. So there's no incentivization to say the developers are just going to register some garbage. There's also, I believe, a massive vetting process currently to even register your application on EigenLayer. So this is also not very realistic scenario, but is possible, especially in the case where there's bugs. This is extremely possible, I would say. The third and final thing with the triangle of trust here is everyone trusts the veto committee for reverse slashing. What the hell does that mean? Let's talk about that. So if we go back, I don't have a final slide for some reason. If we go back here, right, what happens in this case? The developers made a mistake and the operators lost their funds. They lost the stakers' funds. Everyone's unhappy, right? Because no one's acted dishonestly. No one's done the wrong thing. There's just been a mistake that has caused this whole system really to break down. So the way that EigenLayer treats this is they have what's called a veto committee that is able to do what's called reverse slashing. And as the name suggests, they are able to undo or reverse the slashing that occurred in these cases where it shouldn't really have happened, right? No one's done anything wrong. There's just been a mistake in the code. There's been a bug. Something's gone wrong, but no one's really done the wrong thing. And we want to say, hey, you know what? We messed up. Let's actually revert or reverse slash is a funny word. Reverse slash the operator and the stakers that got slashed because no one's done anything wrong. We just made a mistake. So this is comparable in my mind to like a multi-sig in the rollups that exist today, where they're able to fix vulnerabilities that are identified. They're able to fix bugs in the system that are identified and protect people from losing their money in these kind of initial stages of the release, right? And with rollups, at least, I'm not sure about EigenLayer specifically, but within rollups, there are roadmaps and plans to, over time, reduce the power that the multi-sig has and only be able to fix on-chain verified bugs in the system, which is pretty much agreeable by everyone that that is a good thing. And I assume that is the case of the EigenLayer system as well, that this veto committee will lose power over time as the system matures and these kind of kinks get worked out. So that is my ultimate guide to EigenLayer. I hope you enjoyed and got some value out of it. I will leave the link to the slides in the description below if you want to get your own copy. I will also leave the link to any of the resources that I mentioned throughout this video. If you did enjoy this one, I would massively appreciate if you left a like on the video. It does help me reach more people and keep making these videos. And if you want to see more content like this one, remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next video. Thank you very, very much for watching. I appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next one.